Chishe yoxatini, the cut Johan. ḳúdáx utiayagi, was ḳúdáx getiyesu. Was achawe kheqa, shukwa tlay daku satan, yayagi. Was tlay daku satan, khawagi tunache akhwashke, khasatin, tlay darkness tan. One qanins qanakh yage with tlay. Chutlay awe, ya. Atki kat butzigiti, nachawe wusla, kunach wusla. Nukt hartly, you do a sag waiter, nukt hartly, kunach yagea. Atlin sai kutziti dleit dat. What thing it renach in aquatana dat. Chakawe kachshit, yate hekosakuk. That yaxaway. One Collins Goshi Saku Gande has to a tea, Achoa, the Haane Kaku. Yeah, outdoor studies, you do a sago at Ya has to a Sakuyanta Hasawas teeny. Glade, that aya. Kagu has to inkachanik. Yeah, that yaxaway get your hatangi. Ye said Yegachisatin Achana Yata. Gwashisaku Yata Putzati. Gwash kesh the cut at a data where you atitla at you out tuch at ya wait gwash kesh watisaku. Wait gwash kesh watisaku. Echosaku. Dasatsu. Kone yang aktuasaku hasawasku adat. Dleit. Cut blade. What do you say? Cut blade. Blade yacheti. Blade yacheti. Blade dark wusatan.
Blade dark wusatan.
Blade dark wusatan.
Blade dark wusatan.
Blade yakawadan.
Blade yakawadan.
Blade yakawadan.
Blade yakawadan.
Blade qadlan.
Blade godlan.
Blade qadlan.
Blade godlan. Godlan.
Blade a couchlan.
Blade a couchlan.
Blade a couchlan.
Blade a couchlan.
Blade qidi.
Blade gaidy.
Blade qidi.
Blade gaidy.
Blade kaketsk.
Blade kaketsk.
Blade kaketsk.
Blade kaketsk.
Blade kakechk.
Blade kakechk.
Blade kakechk.
Blade kakechk.
Blade kaketsk.
Blade kaketsk.
Blade kaketsk.
Blade kaketsk.
Blade yetki.
Blade yetki.
Blade yetki.
Blade yetki.
Blade yekanashain.
Blade yekanashain.
Blade yekanashain.
Blade yekanashain.
Blade kauhu.
Blade kauhu.
Blade kauhu.
Blade kauhu.
Huakan katits ayi.
Huakan katits ayi.
Huakan katits ayi.
Huakan katits ayi.
Nuktatli.
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 Hati.
Káxlaín,
Káxlaín.
Káxlaín,
Káxlaín.
Yetzchi,
Akhyatski.
Yetzchi,
Akhyatski.
Leit Kastik,
Dleit kastik.
Leit Kastik,
Dleit kastik.
Leit Kastikchi,
Dleit kastik.
Leit Kastikchi,
Dleit kastik.
Kanach Kakausha
Akanach kusha kawadlis ich.
Sha Kaudlis.
Kusha kawadlis.
Kanach Kusha Kaudlis.
Akanach kusha kawadlis ich.
Kauchs.
Akauus.
Kauchs.
Akauus.
Leit Kadi.
Dleit kadi.
Leit Kadi.
Dleit kadi.
Leit Tin Kaudua Chuhu Ka.
Dleit tin kaudua chuka.
Leit Tin Kaudua Chuhu Ka.
Dleit tin kaudua chuka.
Leit Kachuchti.
Dleit kachikti.
Leit Kachuchti.
Dleit kachikti.
Leit Zuna.
Dleit zuna.
Leit Zuna.
Dleit zuna.
Leit Chaki.
Dleit aki.
Leit Chaki.
Dleit aki.
Leit Kot.
Dleit kwat.
Leit Kot.
Dleit kwat.
Leit Shakatzu.
Dleit shakadzu.
Leit Shakatzu.
Dleit shakadzu.
Leit Zuna Shauduwadzu.
Dleit zuna shauduwadzu.
Leit Zuna Shauduwadzu.
Dleit zuna shauduwadzu.
Kauchahin.
Akaushlihin.
Kauchahin.
Akaushlihin.
Awasus.
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 That's Eastja.
Kas isja.
That's Eastja.
Kas isja.
Panek.
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 Yanashnek.
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 Leit Kaushanek.
Dleit kaushinek.
Leit Kaushanek.
Dleit kaushinek.
Kaushaduk.
Kaushiduk.
Kaushaduk.
Kaushiduk.
Leit the Kawakets.
Dleit akawakets.
Leit the Kawakets.
Dleit akawakets.
Leit Kain the Gut.
Dleit ken the gut.
Leit Kain the Gut.
Dleit ken the gut.
Ich Ka Yeguch Shachit.
Ich ka ye guchshach ich.
Ich Ka Yeguch Shachit.
Ich ka ye guchshach ich.
Leit Dark Wushachit.
Dleit da gushach ich.
Leit Dark Wushachit.
Dleit da gushach ich.
Kashachit.
Kashach ich.
Kashachit.
Kashich.
Dleit Ḥuáḥuin.
Dleit Ḥuáḥuin.
Dleit Ḥuáḥuin.
Dleit Ḥuáḥuin.
Dleit Huin.
Dleit Huin.
Dleit Huin.
Dleit Huin.
Jaji.
Jaji. Jaji.
Ashkashchit'a.
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 Ichkach dleit dakushachit.
Iskach dleit dakushachit.
Okay, it's cheese shuhan. Yet dleit doach to us a good dot you took the ton. What aku are you han? Ya nakig ayaha idach. Ya Kwanlin was AKET. Dleit dakus tannen. Gwell hechwasagu gwell sa. Gwell cactus. Shuahichin. Gwell deich sandech ak shuahichin. Uhan kwak eka shukwat dleit dakus tani.
Is Quinn to shovel?
Yes. When. When is to shovel. You're gonna get tired of that verb.
Isn't I know November is something when right?
This.
Ḵúkahaa.
Ḥúkáhaa.
Yeah, so it's the shoveling month or the digging month, something like that.
It's a dig.
Dig.
Digging out, a little bit different.
Right.
This is like scooping and shoveling. This would also work for if you were spooning the snow. It would be the same thing.
Right. So it's
Yeah, like use a shovel. If that's like when I go outside and you have to with a spoon. Come on. That's your
I
question.
feel like there was one of the verbs, one of the words that we were doing that the stem did not look at all like what I briefly saw in the second column.
Oh, there's probably some that I didn't completely finish. I know I deleted one that was way off. This one, like this
I
one.
think it was on slide 10. If you were just scrolling back through it. Yeah, the top one.
Oops. Yeah, I didn't finish that. Okay. I'll just leave it
Okay.
blank. I'll go and finish.
Then I'm less confused.
Yes. So these are I noticed a couple of them that I hadn't finished. Hastily talk without Oh, so here's some fun bonus round stuff. I think we're talking about stuff like this today a little bit. So these are things you can put in front of a verb. And we're not going to look at a whole exhaustive list of them, but just so you know, there's some things coming that will help you to sort of just think about using the language and how to use it a little bit. Oh, let's have more options with it. I'm going to change the font on this. Okay. So I think we'll just start with these ones now. And maybe we'll do some others later. Okay, I'll add one more. So anybody have any ideas on what a Dane would mean?
I say it all the time. Like well, like ďáká and stuff like that.
Well, or carefully. So what then would a Dane be?
Not well. The opposite.
Not well.
Roughly. Badly.
Anybody hear Chakugei before?
Like any old way, all
Yeah.
over the.
How do you spell is, let's see. Is that right?
Haphazardly.
Aw,
What about ḳukahaa? If it comes before a verb?
Something with a mouth.
Well, that would be ḳukahaa.
is it really when it's before a verb? No,
Truly.
truly. Okay.
It's ḳukahaa as a it's like true. And so you could say like ḳukahaa shingit, it's a true shingit, it's a true human being. It has an opposite, which is yesha. Yesha is a counterfeit or an imitation. But if it comes before a verb, like you could say ḳukahaa, we truly felt good. Ḳúnáx,
Now that's real.
Really, like
Really?
very.
really, yeah.
Very.
I like it as really, and this is kind of a little nitpicky, but kach I like as very, and I know there's not a whole lot of difference between those things. But again, if you said ḳúnáx, this would ḳukahaa would be a true human being. And then ḳúnáx would be a real human being. And those are, it's really splitting the differences. There's not a huge difference between true and real, I guess. I don't know. And then kach is very. What about ḳúdáx or ḳúdáx?
Too much.
Much. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions on the snow stuff?
Does it have anything to do with like relationals with the nach and the nach?
Okay. Now we gotta do this. Yes. Okay. So we're gonna do 3. I should do a little table. So I do. I know I have this somewhere else too. So here's ḳ. We're gonna go ḳ all the way down. And then we're gonna go nach and dach and e. I gotta put these on. And they, those are the only. Okay. I think there's just those 4. So thinking about these suffixes, what generally is nach? Through.
Through, along.
What about dach? Dach.
Away from.
What about
There.
At.
arriving at? What about they?
Or
Towards.
So this, we got to think about what ḳ is, because it is all over the place in Tlingit. And I do believe it's the same one. But in terms of like languages, you don't just go straight back and forth, right? Like this, sometimes you do have things like that, like douche is cat and cage is dog. And those, there's not a whole lot of argument, I guess, between those. But then there's some things where it's like, well, we got to just talk about this thing, and this is one of those big concepts. So when we put these together, we get ḳúnáx, and that again is really, and ḳúdáx is too much. What is ḳút? Anybody know that one?
there.
Ḳútwugud dudushi.
Just right, maybe? I don't know, just guessing.
Ḳútwugud dudushi. Anybody remember that?
You say?
Maybe enough, maybe? Just
Fine.
trying to think about it.
Let me find this thing, then we'll see if this sparks any memories. We've
Yeah,
heard.
but you were gonna waste so much time waiting for Riley to call that you're not gonna be able to get anything done.
So it's,
We heard that. Okay. Anybody remember what this says?
your daughter, wait, is that your daughter crying? Her cat, her cat, something,
Cat something.
yeah.
Anybody remember?
Ran away.
Ran away, left.
Ran away, but literally got lost,
Yeah,
right? So coming back, this one is lost. And then this one is to oblivion.
oh yeah,
Ooh, Olivia.
Okay. So if we
You're
go,
still showing the same
Can't you
thing. You haven't switched back over.
can you see it now? Does it not?
Ah,
Okay. Sorry.
cookie cake.
Oh, yeah. To what?
gave us to oblivion, now we need and beyond.
Oh, right. Well, I guess beyond would be ayanach would be to go past. So if you're going through q, you end up with really. If you're coming from q, it's too much. If you arrive at q, it's lost. If you're going towards it, it's to oblivion. And so this one is used to, it's a pretty rarely used thing, but it's to talk about the eclipse. You could say, predict the good. It just walked off into nothingness. It disappeared. I think that people were scared of eclipse a long time ago. Thought it'd turn us to stone. There's a lot of things we thought. Raven would turn people to stone. Eclipse would turn people to stone. So, any other questions about any of these? So we're gonna look at these. This is kind of the complete list, I think, of pronouns. I've been hiding them from you. But that's kind of all of them. There are some on here that we'll talk about a little bit more. Incrementally. There's some that you'll notice, some of them. If you read the stories, you'll see ush. Like once you know what it is, you'll start seeing it all over the place. We got kind of different ways of looking at some of this stuff. We're going to talk about some of that this evening. But I thought we'd just start with it was the first snow here. I'm sure it snowed in Whitehorse quite a while ago. Just some things to think about. Qatlan is for a body of water or for snow to be deep. So that's, what's that? Yeah, so Qatlan is when it really piles up. Usatan is for precipitation to happen. There's a bunch of different names for snow. Usually they're compound sort of phrases, so it's like this plus that. I was thinking about this one. These are the really large flakes that hit the ground, and as soon as they hit the ground, they just melt right away.
I think it was like that earlier.
Yeah, and that's usually the first, like among the first snows of the year, is you get that Ňuktháte, which is what it's called. Let's see. There's some other fun ones. Just this is with snow people shape. So this verb, it means to massage something or to pat it and shape it into something. So we use it to talk about Play-Doh. We use it to talk about snowball. If you were, making like a meatball, you would usually do that. And so that's that chu verb root, which it's too long. And so there's a number of these ones I didn't finish too. Zuna is pretty fun. That's a missile. And that comes from a verb. So the verb would be, in this case, shakadzu, or no, it would be shawadzu. A shawadzu would be to throw something and trying to hit someone in the head. And then awatsu would be to throw something at someone.
All right, so if you drew it and tried to hit another body part, would it be a different word?
No, like only the head gets its own. Because usually, I think it's related to the way you would hunt for small birds a lot of times, is you chuck a rock at their head to kill it.
Katsuku Juma.
A fun missile? Okay.
I'm trying to say I like that word.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah. Well, you kasaku. Yeah, so because kasaku zuna would be like, yeah, it would be like a fun missile. Which could work, like I don't know, like a bottle rocket or something. But yeah, zuna is
I was
a
thinking,
and zoo is a fun verb root.
Would you use like a similar thing if you had like a sling or something like that, or?
I don't think so. I think there is a verb like that would end up with like throwing, but maybe I'd have to check because I think using something, but I have a feeling this has to do with using your hand, like really aiming with your hand. And there's probably a different verb for a sling because we did use those. Because you'd have a different, this wouldn't work for throwing a spear. This wouldn't work. It's really like to grab a thing that's not typically a weapon and to use it as a missile. So rocks, we use this one for a bowling ball. Yeah, hand up, Beth, what's up?
What is the difference between dleit kachikti and dleit zuna?
They're just variants, and so I don't know if there is a difference. There's just two different ways to say it. But as far as like, this would be the snow that had already been packed up, and then this is snow missile. So snow missile is my favorite because I just like the word zuna. And then I have a cat, and her name is Shuna, which came from Marge Detson. We're just making up a story, and she made up that name for a cat. So we named our cat Shuna. And I don't throw the cat, but I thought Shuna Zuna would be pretty funny if I did throw the cat as a missile at someone, which I wouldn't do unless there was like a monster and I was like, get him, cat. So
What if the cat missiled itself? I mean, I
yes,
have cats too, and
you get shush. I guess, like, let's say you crawled into a catapult that you made and you then turned yourself into a missile. I think you would say chush ḥuadedzuna, which would be chush ḥuadedzu. I missiled myself. And so, or ḥuadedzu would be the short way to say it.
But it would be they missiled themselves, because unless the cat's speaking.
Like if someone missiled themselves, like you would have to shoot yourself out of like some sort of contraption.
And my cat actually shot herself from like where I am to where you are.
Because pouncing is different. That's a straight up gut, which means attack. And so anything can attack, but the missile means something threw you in that direction, which is a little bit different than.
I think I needed to know that, for like daily life,
And some people, they throw their cat so their cat will attack people. That's, I'm sure that has happened.
Would that be like that one weapon?
I don't think so, but I will look into it. It's like there's a name, it's called Chi-on, and throwing a spear is different than these. So this is like using a rock or some general thing.
That's not like an arrow shape.
Basically grabbing something that's not a weapon and making it into a missile.
I will have to find it, but there's a Facebook meme of them missiling cats out of like a forest.
I do think people do it. I think people missile cats. Yeah, so you could awatsu with a book. You could if you throw it and it can hit someone. Like some things you can't, like a piece of paper. Like you wadded up a piece of paper, yes, but just like a feather, it'd be very hard. Like it wouldn't work. And so this gets us into the throwing verbs, which I guess if we're going there, we should just go there. which let's. So Tlingit is always ready for if there was like a game show and it'd be like, I'll take categories for 1,000. Tlingit's like, yes, I've got categories all over the place. So one, like swimming, there's just a few verbs that just have tons of categories: carrying things, swimming, fishing, throwing things. So when we go down to the throwing verbs, we get a whole bunch, right? And so sometimes what Tlingit is coding, the way it's creating these categories, is sometimes for like, I need to know how to carry this thing. But in this case, it's usually like, how do you throw it and what kinds of things happen once you throw it? So here you have plural objects, which I don't know, one of my favorite because it's so random and kind of scary, but like they will throw you into the furnace on the ḳúdáx, which is technically saying you will all be thrown into the flames of the fire. So the furnace isn't, I don't even think the furnace is really in there.
Furnace is like strewn, right? Or something like that.
Stew.
Yeah, stew. And so I think it's implied. It's like this is literally like you'll be thrown into the fire, which okay. There's a ta in the fire. I just want you to know that there's so we did some of these directional relational terms. Does anybody remember talk? Hearing talk. Talk. E high tone long A K.
Oh,
That's
Have you ever
into, isn't it?
talk? Kind of. We usually hear it with water. Hintak. Hintakati. Hintakudzi. Right? So talk is into a body of water. And it's complicated, right? Here's another big conceptual, I guess it's big concept day. So talk is a cavity or like something you can get into, but it's kind of, we got to talk these, there's another one of these things we got to kind of talk out. So you are talk if the water is deep enough for you to submerge, or if you're actually submerged in the water. You're takka if you are on the bottom of the surface, like if you're walking on the bottom of the pool, if you sink down to the bottom of the lake or the river, that's takka, which is follows the same things as like dak becoming dakka. So you can go takka, but talk is into a cavity. And it's really interesting. Like we're just going to keep an eye out for when things are talk, when they're qay. I guess I was doing throw, but now I'm making notes. Sorry. What happened today is my day got quickly out of hand. And so this is sort of the result, is I end up with a whole bunch of random yet connected thoughts. So we're kind of talking out a couple of different, there's some different terms here that I want us to just think about in Tlingit, because we've talked about direction and location things. And I just think there's a couple of these things that really, they just tend to work so differently in Tlingit that I think it's good to talk about them. So there's ka, there's talk, and there's qay. So these are three that I want us to just sort of think about and to just keep an eye out for them when we see them. I guess we got to add, these are like the, if I could think of a fifth, I'd have a basketball all-star team, but we'll just stick with these four. So just generally speaking, what is ka? It's just, it's on, right? That would be the shortest definition. It's more than that sometimes, because it could be in an open container. And what is talk?
Submersion.
Yeah, submerged or in a cavity. And what is, have we done qay? And I'm gonna come, I see a question in the chat, I'm gonna come back to it. So qay is between the folds of, which is, again, we just gotta watch for these. Because what does a spider have? Qaywu. What's a net? Qaywu. What's the name of a big open bay? Qay. What's your brain called? Qay. What's your crook of your arm called? Jiqay. It's all over the place, right? And which one you're going to use kind of depends on how Tlingit Tundatani sees the relationship between these things. And then yik,
Like in
Down.
in a shallow container, kind of, right? But we get a whole bunch more when we sort of look at these things. And I thought of táak because one of the things that happens with classifiers sometimes, the L group classifier, okay? So now we got táak, we're all over the place. How fun. What a fun day to just be all over the place. I hope I don't cause too much confusion. So we're gonna look at classifiers here. Then we're gonna come back, and we're gonna come back, and we're gonna come back. It's all circling around in these scatterbrained kind of ways. So somebody tell me, okay, let's say I'm from outer space and I just zap myself here. And the first question I have for you humans is, what is a Tlingit classifier? What are you gonna tell me?
it's a way
Really? That's the first question you want to know?
That's absolutely the first question I would ask. I don't care who the leader is. I don't care what kind of technology you got. Tell me about this classifier.
Your language is primitive.
Okay,
It's an ingredient of a verb.
it's an ingredient of a verb. It's good.
it changes the meaning of a verb to be specific.
Okay, it changes the meaning and it can add categorization. What else?
So is it like null classifier, L classifier, S and SH classifier?
Yeah, there's these 4 groups. Great. What's this I?
There's
What,
these 4 groups, but they also change within that group depending on things.
that is correct.
And depending on things that are still chucked into my box of Tlingit concepts that I'm not to yet.
Okay. Wonderful. This great. I would be a satisfied alien. That's okay. Give me some Reese's Pieces and I'm gonna go home, tell all my people about this. Okay. So a Tlingit classifier, there are 4 groups. If it will not change groups without becoming a new verb. This is one of the ways we can make new verbs, is by just changing the classifier. So you got some kind of verb root. Okay. Now you can change the classifier to change that verb. And it does some pretty common things. One of the common things it does is that it's not just happening, yet, hey, it's not just good. Somebody made it good. It's like, hey, you made it good. Right? Or I might say, yichik. So sometimes it's going to change to S or L to say, we're adding some agency to this whole verb. Somebody's doing this thing, right? The other thing, that 0 group is just the most common classifier. It's by far the most common classifier. You need a verb? Grab a 0 classifier. We got a million of them. The SH classifier is the least common. So as far as most common to least common, it goes 0, S, L, SH. The S group is often associated with putting things into categories, right? I'm not being, I am one of these things. That's an S classifier. The L classifier pops up. These are loosely associated meanings. It's not like it means that every single time. But the L classifier commonly pops up to say it has that kind of thing. If I put a hat on, had these cute little ears like Mickey Mouse, there would be a shiguku sao, an eared hat. The word for mitten is sa, TS, long high A, X apostrophe. But what if I wanted a glove? Shikeki sa, the fingered mitten.
So it's like kind of not literal, like if you have a hat with ears on, it's not like you have literal ears, it's like.
It says it's eared. It has ears. If you say that, then you said a hat. For example, someone built a house a long time ago, put a giant killer whale dorsal fin image on it, right? They carved a big dorsal fin, put it on there. Shigushi hit is what that's called. Shigushi hit. It has a dorsal fin. I bring this up. Well, let me finish the SH. The SH is the least common. It's often associated with things that people kind of don't like. Now, again, it doesn't mean it's that thing every time, but that's the sort of the meanings that are generally associated with it. So I brought that up because things can be táak. There is this, like we could say goose, the weather has clouds, right? But you could say, if there was a cloud just floating around in this room, I might say itika. It's a room that has clouds, which would be kind of weird.
So it's like saying that, does it say that the verb has something?
It's usually a thing has, it's usually going to come before a noun.
So the L classifier, something has something, but not.
It's not every time, but that is one of the uses of it,
Like
yes.
attribute?
Sort of, yeah. Yeah, so because you can say, for example, you could say, and yeah, sometimes you do get this is the attributive suffix that pops up on the end. So you can say shijini, what's a noun that we can make have arms? We're just gonna put arms onto it. Oh, kayakajate, right? So shijini kayakajate means this chair has arms, right? Which we might have a different name for it in Lingi, because it's like it would be the thing below the arms, right? But this, in my mind, this is a chair that has like some hands that you can, maybe you like to be held. So you sit in a chair and then you wrap these little arms around you or something. Yeah. But so if you put tesh in front of this, you're going to end up with this. No arms. What will happen is this will contract to shijini. And does anybody know what that's the name for?
Vest?
That's a vest. So that literally means no arms. That's a clever way to name a vest, okay? So what makes me think of this? Táak means it has a cavity. The name of your pupils, táak. The name of into the fire, táak, or táak. And so some of these things, like there's some sort of container there. There's some sort of cavity there. This stuff gets kind of wild. Okay, we got one question in the chat and then we'll take our break. How do you handle plural nouns with impersonal verbs? Okay. So did you find an impersonal verb that you wanted to pluralize?
Yes, that's the example sentence there. I was trying to say the roads are slippery.
Oh, okay. So we'll go down to eat. And what kashachit is, that is transitive, but the question, whoops, I don't think I switched my thing, okay. So looking this up, it's a transitive verb to make it slimy, but I think that's actually different. And so let's actually go to a different source. Hold on a second.
Look.
Okay. So let's see what Ḵúkáhaa has in the verb list. So think about all of this stuff. And then the big question is, how do I use this stuff when I want to look up a verb? So this is the verb database made by Carrie Eggleston. You can search for things, like you can look for a slippery or slip. And so if I look for slip, that brings me down to read. And then I've got slippery, and I've got some random. Okay. For something to be slippery. So here you do, this is an impersonal verb. So there's no object, there's no subject on there. And so if we look down here, if it's slippery, I'll put sand there. So what you would end up with, I don't think this verb needs to be attributed to individual things. So I would say the cut a kashich. So that means all the roads are slippery. And this is wild because I think your English brain wants to pluralize that. It's like, I really, really want to pluralize that. But I don't think you need to, because it's just saying all of them are slippery. So there's no need to sort of talk about them individually. You might be able to force it, but I don't think you'd need to for this particular verb.
Is that true?
Mhm.
Like every time you use cut, that you don't need to pluralize it, even if the thing is like uncountably many. That cut just does all that work and it's fine.
Well, so if you said ḳúdáx hasike, I think you would have to pluralize that. But for roads to be slippery, I don't think it would need to pluralize that. But it might, like I'll ask a speaker, because you might end up with this, which, so we know what hus is, right? I'll get to you in a second. What does hus do in this particular case?
It pluralizes the people that are good, or the things that are good.
Yeah, so it pluralizes the third person, object, subject, or both. Dach is a very similar thing to hus. And it has two different uses. One, for non-human things. Not every speaker uses this. It's one of these terms that I do think is falling out of use. The other thing is what we call distributive. So if I said, they all jumped into the water, if I was using hus, I would think of a big group of people all jumping into the water. But if I use dach, I would think of a person jumping this way, one jumping that way, just that they all did the same action, but sort of on their own. So Tlingit does keep track of that stuff too. So I would, if this was to pluralize the verb, I would expect dach to pop out there.
Because it has an SH, does that mean that people don't like it?
Yeah, yeah, like, because for something to be slippery, you're really communicating like you might fall on that. You gotta be careful how you walk on it, you gotta be careful how you deal with it. And so it does have a bit of a negative, right? Because like think of like walking on the beaches here, big rocks, cold beach. You need to be sure like you're letting people know. If you step there, it's slippery.
So is there any other data that is stored in the classifier in that, other than people don't like it?
Well, the SH, there's a few of these verbs as well.
SHI.
Okay, let's take a break. And we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about negation, and then I'll show you some examples of other ways that SH is used for a classifier. Okay, come back in 5 minutes. Sheesh. Okay, good sheesh. We're looking at a couple things over the break, and I just want to cover them real quick. So, on the advanced Tlingit page, so learning Tlingit, advanced Tlingit, I gotta change all these to Tlingit. It's gonna take me a little time. But under advanced, so basically the way these pages are structured is the top part is all the resources that you kind of need to study Tlingit, I think. And then there's a whole bunch more than this, but this is sort of like you get your starter kit, and then you get your intermediate kit, and you get your advanced kit. So under advanced, there's a few new things that maybe we haven't talked about in here. And one of them is this noun list that we were looking at. So the noun list, if you're not finding a word for something in the dictionary, you might hop into this and just sort of see. So there's several different versions of it. I'm gonna turn the spell check off. So when you take a look at this document, it's a database, so it's not really print ready, but it's got more nouns than perhaps any other thing right now. Although we're making new nouns all the time, just as we use the language more, we're like, oh, we gotta have a word for this thing, gotta have a word for that thing. So there's kind of two main pages here, two sheets. So the first one is Tlingit, and it's alphabetical in Tlingit. So you do have several categories. This is going to say D in front of it, whereas we would take care of this nowadays like with that, and we wouldn't have D. But just so you know, that's a placeholder for a third person singular. They're younger siblings of the same gender. That's what that means. This is the work of Ḳúnáx, Jeff Lear. When you're thinking about how it's alphabetized, just keep in mind it does not distinguish high and low vowels. It does not distinguish underlines. So here's a keys and keys right underneath it. So that is something to keep in mind when you're looking at stuff on here. It's searchable. The second sheet is by what we call translation equivalent. So if you look at column G, this is the one word equivalent in English. And so this is also alphabetized that way. So if you want to say, oh, well, what's the word for sea anemone? Anemone. It's right there. So then you can see the different words there. Some of these entries are written like that. So that would be clean. And so there's a bit of kind of transcription work to do. So eventually, at some point, all of this will be migrated into a single dictionary, but that's taking. We also had a question over a break, which was how would you say to butt dial someone, which would be to accidentally dial them on your phone, sometimes by sitting on it or near it. So to answer that, we are going to go into the verb database. And the first thing we're going to look at is, does anybody know how to say to call someone on the phone?
I guess that'd be ḥúk.
To use a phone, but to call.
Well, ḥúk would be to summon someone. So you could call them on the phone and then say, get on over here. So
Isn't the noun for to call out, ooh, like hey nutting, no, it's eek.
so ke'ik would be to yell at someone,
Yeah,
or sometimes to invite them.
going through a machine.
What verb do we use to talk?
ḳúdáx.
Yeah, so chatunk. So you chayatunk, they are talking. So let's go look at ton. There are a bunch of ton verb roots. I think this database has them all listed under a single ton. I think there's maybe 10 different ones. We don't all see things the same, which is fine. So if we just sort of scroll here, we do see speak to someone on the phone, and then we have call them on the phone. So calling is what we're looking for. And so the literal interpretation is to talk to their possession or to their hand. So you have a command form, dleit in the tan. So if you're a fan of the musician Blondie, there's a song which would be dleit in the tan. Call me. And that's also how you just tell someone to call you. So then I think you would end up grabbing this, dleit out the tan. So let's start with that. We're going to copy that and go back to our notes that were taken for class. And we would say, dleit out the tan. So now we got to add a word in here. What word would we add? So now you would say, dutuk. Because I would add a ch here, because for someone's butt to do something is fairly unusual. But this could mean, this doesn't really always mean that their butt did it. It means they did it with their butt too. So, and then you would add dleit out the tan.
classifiers.
So Tlingit also has a way, because you have d in there twice. You might know that those are two different ones. But you can also say that dleit out the tan. What the ush does in this case, it's another pronoun. And it says that main character, that person that we've been talking about. That's why you see it in stories. When you see ush in there, you're like, oh yeah, that's Raven. Oh yeah, that's that cannibal. Oh yeah, that's that young person. It's that person we've been talking about, sorry. Okay. So when verbs go negative, Oscar the Grouch is our spokesperson for this, or Oscar Wave. Don't hit me with a copyright violation. He's just saying, I don't love anything. So this comes about, we're going to look at a verb exercise before too long. So what I did is I took a verb, which is sakhan, to love someone. And I worked with Káhuanísh, George Davis. I just sat down, I wrote every combination I could think of. I love you, I love y'all, I love them all, I love people, I love something. You love me, you love us, you right? And just did every possible combination. And we did the negatives. Once we switched to the negatives, his wife used to sit in the next room and she would sometimes listen to the work we were doing. She must have been listening. Because I said, I don't love you. And she goes, Sean from the next room. And so, but then we did all the negatives. I don't love you. I don't love you all. Just to see, so we can just see what that verb looks like when it starts changing. So we did all the possible combinations for me. I don't love you. I don't love y'all. I don't love them. I don't love them all. I don't love people. I don't love something. And then he said, you forgot one. I said, what? He says, I don't love anything. I was like, ooh. Then I had to grab this picture.
So I don't remember what time I was meant to ask about it, but like the was it SHI or L? It was SHI.
I opened this because we're looking at the SH classifier. And we're not going to look at how verbs go negative. I'll put this up there so you can see it. It's a jump ahead. But there is this thing where there's a positive form of a verb, which we're going to spell correctly. There's a negative form. And then there's what we call a negative antonym. Not every verb does this. I think these are the only ones that we currently know of. And this is the work of Seth Cable, who's a linguist in Massachusetts who comes to work with us. And he's a super nice guy. So here's some examples. Everybody just repeat after me. Yuk'e.
Hey.
Okay.
Kesh'uk'e.
Okay.
Kesh'ush'ke. Yakutzige.
Yakutsage.
Yakudzige.
Kesh'yakuske.
Yeah.
Yakuske.
Kesh'yakushke.
Yeah.
Yakuske.
Kechait. Kesh'ushchait. Kesh'ushchait. Unique.
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 Kesh'unique.
Unique.
Kesh'ushnique.
Unique.
Asagu.
Asagu.
Asigu.
Kesh'keska.
Esko.
Kesh'keshka.
Esko.
Kitsin.
Fitsin.
Kitsin.
Kesh'ushtzin.
Usin.
Kesh'ushchin.
Usin.
There you're seeing is, isn't, is opposite. Not every verb does this, but these, so when you say kesh'ushke, that is a different verb than yuk'e. But we use it all the time. We use it all the time, right? And I'll just share a little. As you learn how to conjugate verbs, it's going to be okay. You're going to have some misfires now and then. Sometimes those are going to be fun. There was a student who was a distant student. And so we did a whole bunch of stuff in Tlingit. We were well into maybe second year, third year. And I ran into this person in person. There was a conference here in Juneau. And I said to them, Wasa iati. And they said, Kesh ishke. And what did they say?
But and
Oh, oh, you're bad.
You are bad.
wait.
I said, Kataka. And they said, Kesh ishke. Oh, I was like, what did I do though? And it was just a misfire. It was a fun one. We laughed about it later. Kesh ishke. You are
That's
bad, evil, horrible.
So we've learned this before, but tell me again, because every time I see it, I'm like, it's double negative. It's like not bad instead of like bad, like because you're saying kleth ushke.
What would that mean? Would that mean not bad?
Well, you can't, I don't know if you can double negative these and Tlingit.
Okay.
But I mean, why does the tleth come before ushke? Why would you just say ushke, which means bad? Why do you say kleth ushke?
Okay, so you have to have the tesh and the sh classifier.
I have two questions.
Okay,
So one of them is this SH stuff
This is the SH stuff.
Okay.
Showing you another thing that it does.
Wait, it's another thing? I thought it was the same thing.
Well, this is showing you how it can be sometimes the opposite of something that's, all of these things are pretty good, right? Good, smart, lucky, tidy, fun, strong. Those are all great things. Then you got not good, not smart, not lucky, not tidy, not fun, not strong. Those are not great things.
First one using SH? Are they part
The
of?
right-hand side. So what this is showing you, there's a small handful of verbs where you can have is, isn't, opposite. For example, we go to eat some food. Wasabuti, itchai. How is your food? Yak a, it was good. Wasabuti itchai. Tesh uke. That means it just wasn't good. But then sometimes tesh ushke, we ain't never coming back to this restaurant. It was bad. Same thing, okay? You could have a person who is good. They defend people, they do the right thing, they make good decisions. That's all in the yak a category. They're not good, but maybe they're not harmful. And this is a judgment call. Stay away from them. That's a bad person.
And then if it's negative, does it always have a U or O's in it?
Yes, there is a little conjugation thing that is a letter U. It will be in all negatives, all futures, all comparisons. What it means is there's some break from reality. It must be in all negatives.
And it doesn't like double the negative, it just stores the one negative.
Yeah, because it's not a negative on its own. It just means that there's something, like here's the verb, like good.
Yeah.
That means there's something that's separating it from good. What it means is there's a separation, there's something, because you could say it pops up in all futures because you say it will be good. But if you were to say, if someone was to say, like, how is your foot? And if you say ke, it will be good. That probably means it's not great right now, right? So you kind of end up communicating both those things at once.
Wasn't there something in the beginning book about not so bad or not too bad or?
Yeah, so you could say, yeah, that's a really good question too. We're just deep diving all over the place here. Okay. So I think that phrase, so you could say tesh tushke, right? So tesh tushke is the opposite of ach tuwuyake. This is another one where you can have, right? So what would ach tuwuyake? How could we translate that?
I feel good.
Feel good. Okay, now someone else has to answer this one.
Away,
How would I translate tesh ach tuwuke?
away from-
I feel unhappy.
I don't
No,
feel
I,
good.
I do not feel happy.
I don't feel good.
I
So
feel-
we're gonna stick with good because we could change
Okay.
that to sagu. Yes, we could, but sagu would be happy. This is more like good. So then the opposite, tesh tushke, or is it tesh? I can't remember. I think it's chat. No, I think it's ach. Tesh ach tushke. I feel bad. Bad. Let me check let's go find it in beginning Klinge. No. Oh,
So you wouldn't say kleth to ushke, like,
it ends up combining.
okay. Okay, all right, okay.
I think, yeah, there it was.
So in other words, I'm saying that it has changed. Okay.
So yeah, so we have achturyake, tesh chat to, so it's chat. I got it wrong. And then we see it again in tesh kach ḵúdáx. And so we're going to copy this because it's a cool.
Ah,
And so
that's
you
the
all
tool.
did this like a year ago, probably, maybe even more, going way back into your memory banks. So this one is another one where, like, let me fix this. It was ḳut. It makes sense. Okay, ḳúdáx. So how would I say you feel bad? Right? Okay, yeah, okay. Which is a weird thing to say. You might end up, but you can make it a question. Do you feel bad?
Hey. Yeah.
And so there's some interesting probably ways to interpret this, right? Because I feel good, my emotions are good, my spirit's good. And so this wouldn't be like, do you feel like if I'm the Joker and I'm trying to convert you to Darth Vader, do you feel evil? It would be a little different. I would just say, I would say, whoops. Are you bad? So that's how I'll be like, because if we want to be bad together, which I'm not encouraging, I'm just saying grammatically you could do it.
So do you lose the part about the feeling there?
Yeah, because this would be like, if someone said this, I wouldn't think I feel like being an evil person. It's like, no, I feel terrible. Like my feelings are in the dumps. So here you've got tesh, tach, chut, tush, eh, which is I don't feel very bad. Right? So it's like, it's almost, but this ends up becoming not too bad. Because if you were to say, tlach, tlesh, chut, tush, eh, I feel very bad.
What is love?
Very.
There. I don't feel very bad.
So the word order in this case is very important. Tesh, tlach, not very. Tach, tesh, very not. Very not good feeling. Okay. Now how's everybody doing? What's I better hide this first. Are you feeling not very bad? Or are you feeling very, very bad? Okay. We're covering a lot of good questions, a lot of good things you folks are thinking about, which is going to lead us back to the verbs. So what I was thinking about today is just doing a bit of a walkthrough. So I was sitting in New York City probably 4 or 5 years ago, and there was this, I sit next to Joel Isaac, who teaches Denaina language. And there was these folks from a Haudenosaunee language. And so Haudenosaunee languages are Mohawk, Oneida, Seneca, Tuscarora, and Onondagan, I think. And there's this group of languages that are closely related on the East Coast. They're doing like amazing work with their languages. And someone was showing us how they had color-coded their language, and they were using a metaphor, I think, also of a tree to talk about how they're language. So sitting next to Joel Isaac, and he said, I'm going to use a fish. I was like, awesome. And I said, I think I'm going to use a tree. So I have a bunch of different images that are metaphors and visual representations of how a Tlingit verb works. And so for me, there's the things you hear first and the things you hear last. So we'll usually call them first, last, left, right. So we write from left to right. So we're going to write down the first things you say or hear, and then we'll end with the last things you say or hear. So when I was thinking about how to represent that visually, I was like, oh, well, there's the top of the tree and there's all the way down to the roots. So it's like we took a verb and we just tipped it on its side so that the left part or the first thing you hear is up here at the top. So sort of going through this little tree, and if you don't like the tree metaphor, don't stick with it. I got another one that's like a big switchboard. Don't like it, pick a different one. And then I've got these sort of blocks where we sort of go through, we end up at the blocks. But so thinking about this, towards the top of the tree, we have pluralizing the third person, hus. We learned about dach today, but we're not going to worry about that too much. We got to get this hus under control before we start throwing dach in there. In the preverb, you can have motion, upwards, downwards, towards, away from, through. You can have meaning, very, really, kind of, and you can have modifiers, quickly, slowly, those types of things.
Is it good to relate dach to hus?
Yeah, they're interchangeable.
So if I see low tone, if I think something's moving, but it's low tone and it's just low tone, then it's gonna be related to hus.
Yes. Yeah, so the dach as a suffix will always be attached to a noun. And it will always be pretty much always high tone. It can flatten out. So then we're going to get to the object. So who is the verb happening to? That's what the object usually does. There are a few exceptions in Tlingit where you will actually use an object pronoun to talk about who's doing the verb. Then you'll have what? So these things we call thematic or incorporated nouns. You could put a noun into a Tlingit verb. A head, sha, can go in there. A face or a vertical surface, ya. On or a horizontal surface, ka. Those can all go onto verbs. And we're going to look at the most common ones that you find. And then your conjugation stuff. Right here, so right after the thematic, where you can have a noun, is where the conjugation happens. In English, this would be like an ed or an s or an ing to just start moving the verb around. Then we're going to have the subject, who is doing the verb. Then we're going to have a classifier, which is going to be one of four groups. That classifier can go plus I, or it can go plus D. So I drew them as like little fungus that could pop up on the tree. It's running out of ideas. Then I put these three little pieces of grass to talk about the stem variation. So the stem will either be long and high, long and low, short and high. Those are your three options. Then you have the verb root, which is the tree trunk. And then you have these different types of suffixes that might pop up there. And what you've got here is what those suffixes do. So like it happens, you're signaling some sort of repetition. Happens regularly, happens all the time, or it's a single motion with a bunch of little events, like hitting something. Relational, to tie two verbs together, to say when or that the verb is happening. Decessive, used to, but not anymore. There's these couple of unusual ones. There's one to remove, like to pull the guts out of a fish, to pull the meat out of a clam, and then to put something back, which is the opposite of that. There is a, so like awadzu, so we had shawadzu, so I could say, dleit zunatin shachwadzu. I threw a snowball at their head. But then you could say shachwadzucha. I threw it and missed. And then there's another rarely used one, which is like, it's good for that thing or it easily becomes it. You also have post verbs that can pop up. So you can have habitual, nooch. So nooch can pop up after a verb to say it always happens. It's a very common one. 10 years ago, I had like a group of students and they would just throw it onto an English word to just be funny, right? So like, for example, I might walk into class and say, hey, sorry I'm late. And someone will yell, nooch. And I'm not encouraging you to do that to me, so make me look bad on YouTube. But they would just do that, right? Or someone would be like, I forgot my wallet. And they'd say, nooch, right? And that just means always. That's not how it works in Tlingit, but I liked how they were taking control of that word. Consecutive, conditional, and contingent. These are advanced concepts in Tlingit. But like, this thing happened and then this other. It happened because of this other thing. And then I had to look up contingent. I don't remember what it is. We'll do it later. Any questions about our little tree?
Did you just say the bottom one? Which was the one you just said? I kind of lost track for
Contingent.
Contingent.
Yeah, I think contingent's like, it'll only happen if this other thing happens.
There we go. Sheesh.
Isn't that conditional?
No, conditional is like every time this happens, this other thing happens.
Like contingent if it happens.
Yeah. So like, so contingent would be like, only when they got up on the bow did he shoot the seal. Something like that.
The conditional is like,
The conditional would be when he shoots a seal, it sinks.
would it be contingent if it didn't always sink?
Well, yeah, so the conditional in Tlingit is usually, yeah, it is more like it's always like every time it's this, it's that, right? So like, every time I go to leave, I'm waiting for this person, right? Or something like that. It's sort of, it's like, maybe it's not even like that. It's a little bit more like direct cause and effect, right? So like every time I wake up, I make coffee or something like that.
Or it's getting a driver's license is conditional upon getting a learner's license. You have to have one to get the other.
Yeah, that might be contingent, like you've got to get this one in order.
Well, yeah, sure it is contingent, yeah.
The conditional would be like, every time there's the first snow, people go sliding off the road. So it's very directly like cause and effect. Because you can have verbs where it's like, this thing happens when this thing happens. But then the conditional is saying, it's very cause and effect, like teaching moment type of verbs.
So that means contingent's like, if you do something, the other thing might happen, like it suggests it might happen.
It's sort of like you have to do this thing in order for the other thing to happen.
So it won't happen otherwise.
They must happen in a sequence.
So for something to be a thumb, it has to first be a finger. But something to be a finger, it doesn't necessarily have to be a thumb. Is that?
I don't know if it's more like sequence of events than like what things are and become.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay. But they're really there. And when you get down to these types of things, those are very advanced speakers. I think if you just got into a time machine and went back into Tlingit 200 years ago, not everybody's using these big things way down below the surface. Those are the ones where we're like, have them tell the story, have them make the speech, have them, because they could do these big conceptual things. But when you use big, if you are making a speech, if you are telling a story, you are expected to be going deep into those root systems and these other, sometimes it's complicated verb nodes. Okay. So the tree is one idea, but we're going to spend a lot of time with this particular illustration. So this shows you our focus is on the prefix. Building prefixes is the biggest part of Tlingit verbs. That is the biggest part, I think, by far, because it combines the object, the thematic, conjugation, the subject, and the classifier. Now you see the object is only half on the prefix because there's some of them that are disconnected, right? These are the things that are going to run into each other and begin to create contraction. Once you get three things, you're probably going to have contraction. Richard Dowenhauer called it the 3 strikes and you're out rule. But you can have 4, 5, 6 things. You have a lot of things in a Tlingit prefix. But they are going to interact with each other. It's predictable. So we're just going to go through and sort of talk about what each of these things are. And then we're going to talk about the ways that they generally work. And then we're going to start pushing ourselves. And then we're going to go back to just simple verbs. Imperfective is kind of hard to predict because the stem is very hard to predict. He's got to kind of remember what it is. But there's only object and subject is there. There's nothing there in the conjugation spot. So that's why it's easier to start with those. And you say ḳukahaa, icha, or ḳukahaa, icha, acha, tucha, yicha, hasacha. Right? So you can learn how to do that. And you can learn how to do that with the whole series of verbs. So we'll go back on Thursday to that intro to the Tlingit verb one and just take a look at that. Okay. Ask questions if you got them. We're going through preverb and postverb. We're going to start with going outside of the verb itself. So the types of things you'll see in Tlingit, preverb is more common than postverb. Prefix is more common than suffix. We like to put all kinds of stuff in the front of that verb. That's how Tlingit's like, throw it, you know, if we're talking about like where to put something in a verb, Tlingit be like, put it in the front. Yeah, the front is great, right? So in the preverb, you're going to commonly see motion, to, from, through, those types of things. Pluralizing, hus, to the self, chush, or the sh sometimes, which is an object pronoun, or the negative, taish. You'll also learn that this is where all adverbs go. Kedain, táak, those types of things. To see how some of those work, you could say, adik ḳukáhat, I'm going to go there. So this is telling you where I'm going to go. Has akaushahit, they all wrote it. Oops, I should say they all. Shtuchaltu, I'm studying it. I am teaching it inside of my own self. That's how studying works. Kesh chasaka, I don't know. So those are the types of things that pop up in the preverb. They alter the verb. The postverb, habitual, like we talked about this one. So yes, ḳukahainen, kesh kushkednuch. So this one, this is a conditional. Every time fall comes, you always have bad weather. Chakuk askuknuch. They cough all the time. Any questions about that? Object and subject. Object is who it happens to whom it happens. Subject is the one who does it. So, oops. Okay, I gotta change my color scheme. Why did I not do that? Okay. At one point, okay, hold on. Let me pick my blue. Sorry. Yeah. Now I gotta change the subject. Okay. So what we're doing is we're changing the object pronoun, we're changing the subject pronoun. On the top ones, we're specifying to whom the verb is happening. So you have khat isakhan. So that khat part signals you love me. Khat yi shuk. You all laughed at me. Ye ikhasatin. I will see you. Havu'ich. They invited us. Then we go down to changing the subject. You have yim tu'ich or you tu'ich. We invited y'all. You to there it is right there. Ich sechan. I love you. Yichwashuk. I laughed at all of you. Ye'ikhasatin. I will see you. Haswatu'ich. We invited them all. So basically, as we learn how a verb works, we'll learn like there's a list of these, there's a list of these. We can learn how to change them. And the big thing is like what happens in between. That I think is the biggest thing. Because you go ikwa, which would be, how would it be if I said, I saw you?
I saw you.
Let's go right here. So
Ikhwatin.
I saw you, and I also want to get you saw me, and I also want to get we saw you, and I also want to get you saw us. So we'll start with having a third person right up here. Our team. This is the verb we're going to use. It means to see something specific, because we have khatin, which is I can see something, but it's not a specific thing. The S classifier is what makes it specific. You are a specific thing. I saw you. So again, what we've got here is we've got a perfective, zero marker for the subject. So what we need to change, this one will make blue, this one will make red. So the blue and the red have to change, right? So if we kind of piece this together ourselves, we say, I saw you. What is you as an object?
Eh.
And what am I as a subject?
Huh.
So we're going to change this, I, and kha. And these three things, they will combine in a certain way. And especially the focus is right here. If you have y and kha, you will always have khwa. It just jumps to the other side of it. So you end up with I. You end up with I, you, kha. So you have this, but there are too many things. So what Shinget likes to do is like, so here's the root right here. I'm gonna make this, orange for now. Should be brown. There's my little. Okay. So from here, one.
It's like an hour and a half long. I don't
Three
need it. I
vowels.
need it.
That's too many. One of them has to go. And the one that's going to go is that. So we end up with ikhsatin. Ikhsatin. We're only allowing two vowels in this whole prefix. Ikhse. 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 So it's very habitual for us to go ikhwasatin. Be ikhsatin. So what would the mechanics be? Now I gotta change it again.
I saw you.
What?
Cut.
Then that'd be don't do.
These guys, they like to be, especially if there's a consonant vowel classifier, that wants to be yisse. Every time it's be yisse, yishe, yishe. You're gonna have chat yissetin. The last two, so take it home. We saw you. That stays.
B and T.
So now if we just sort of, so what we end up with is we typically have wutusitin. But again, 1, 2, 3, 4 vowels. I think it says no. Some vowels gotta go. So what we're gonna learn is there's a hierarchy to this. I don't know if we've really charted it all out. But for this one, you can't take that vowel away, because then you wouldn't know what it means. The t, the vowel doesn't get knocked out of that. The si, that letter I, that means it has happened. You can't take that away because there's meaning. That means this one can go. Eutusitin. If you're a Tesla speaker or car cross, you'd say imtusitin. You saw us. Last one. You could do it. Do we know what we are as an object collectively? Not us. That's them all. Ha. This one, yissetin. Did it. Look at that. We're changing verbs, right? So part of this, as we go through this stuff, so we're going to take a look at this, and we're going to keep thinking about these different things. So there's like this and this. Pick something from a list, right? But then they get impacted, especially the subject. The subject changes more than the object because it's deep in the prefix. You have two, potentially 3 things in front of it and 1 thing after it. Okay. Just remember, y'all are smart enough to do this. I won't tell you which of my kids, but I was driving with one of my kids. I said, Yaqizage. And she said, I know. She's like, I don't mean I know. I mean, thank you. Yaqizage. Y'all are smart. Smart. Sheesh. See you Thursday. We have to come back with a question in the chat.